I never thought betrayal would come from the person I trusted the most. His name was Adam, and for 7 years he was my safe place. We met at a mutual friend's wedding, where he spilled champagne on my dress and spent the rest of the night apologizing with terrible jokes. From that night we became inseparable. He supported me through losing my father, finishing graduate school, and buying my first home. He told me I was his forever. We talked about children, growing old together, even buying a little house by the lake we visited every summer. Adam wasn't just my partner, he was my best friend. That's why I never suspected a thing. When he started working late, I believed him. When he guarded his phone like it contained state secrets, I brushed it off. When he suddenly became interested in his appearance, I thought maybe he just wanted to feel better about himself. But deep down I knew something felt off. It started small missed calls, forgotten dates. He seemed distracted, far away. I would catch him staring into space during dinner, his fork frozen halfway to his mouth. When I asked if something was wrong, he would smile and say he was just tired. I wanted to believe him. One rainy Thursday I came home early from work. The office had closed due to a power outage, and I thought I'd surprise Adam with his favorite takeout. When I pulled into our driveway, I noticed a strange car parked outside. At first I assumed it was a neighbor's guest. But when I walked in, my heart stopped. A woman's laugh drifted from the living room. I stepped inside quietly, my shoes damp on the tile. Adam sat on the couch, his arm draped casually around a woman I had never seen before. They didn't notice me at first. They were too busy looking into each other's eyes. It felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. When he finally saw me, the color drained from his face. He jumped up, stammering my name while she sat frozen. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I simply set the takeout bag on the table and walked upstairs. He followed me, babbling about how it wasn't what it looked like, how I was overreacting. I told him to leave me alone. That night I slept in the guest room with the door locked. The next morning he was gone. There was a note on the kitchen counter that said he needed time to think. It was almost laughable, as if he hadn't already made his decision. Over the next week I learned the truth. The woman's name was Claire, and she worked with him. They had been seeing each other for 6 months. Some of our mutual friends knew but said nothing. That cut deeper than I expected. I felt humiliated, angry, but most of all I felt small. I kept replaying every moment, wondering how I had missed the signs. One night, my best friend Emily came over with wine and a fierce determination to pull me out of bed. She told me something that stuck with me. Betrayal says more about the betrayer than the betrayed. I wasn't the one who failed. He was. The next morning I started making changes. I deleted his number from my phone. I boxed up his things and left them on the porch. I booked a weekend trip to the coast just for myself. It was terrifying but freeing. On the second morning of my trip, I sat on the beach watching the sunrise. The waves were cold, the sand damp under my blanket. For the first time in weeks I felt calm. I realized I had been building my life around Adam, not myself. And that was going to change. When I returned home, I found an envelope in my mailbox. It was from Adam. Inside was a rambling letter about regret, about how he had made a mistake, about how Claire wasn't what he thought. He asked for another chance. I didn't even finish reading it. I dropped it into the shredder and went inside. Emily called that night and I told her what happened. She laughed and said I should start writing a list of things I wanted to do now that I was free. It sounded silly at first, but it became my lifeline. I wrote down everything: learning to cook Thai food, taking a pottery class, running a half marathon. With every item I crossed off, I felt stronger. Adam tried reaching out again through mutual friends. I told them I wasn't interested. I wasn't going to be someone's second choice. Then one afternoon Claire showed up at my door. Her eyes were red, and she looked nothing like the smug woman I had seen on my couch. She said Adam had been cheating on her too. Part of me wanted to slam the door. But another part of me saw the same pain in her face that I had once carried. We talked for hours, not as rivals, but as two people who had been lied to by the same man. By the time she left, I felt lighter. I realized Adam's betrayal had nothing to do with me or Claire. It was about him, his choices, his selfishness. And I was done letting it define me. A week after Claire came to my door, I started noticing changes in myself. I was sleeping better. I was eating full meals again. I wasn't checking my phone every 5 minutes hoping for a message from Adam. Felt strange at first, this quiet. I realized how much of my life had been consumed by chaos that wasn't even mine. I started taking the pottery class I had written on my list. The first time I sat at the wheel, clay spinning beneath my fingers, I felt a focus I hadn't felt in years. The instructor said I had a natural touch. I laughed, thinking how Adam would have teased me for making lumpy bowls. Now I didn't care. Emily signed us up for a charity 5K run. I was nervous, but training for it gave me a reason to get out of the house every morning. Some days the air was so cold it stung my lungs, but I kept going. Every step felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. One Saturday, I ran into an old college friend named Lucas at the farmer's market. We hadn't seen each other in almost a decade. He was friendly, warm, and easy to talk to. We ended up having coffee right there at a little outdoor cafe. For the first time, I talked about Adam without crying. Lucas didn't try to give me advice. He just listened. When I got home, there was a small envelope tucked into my front door. It was another letter from Adam. This time I didn't even bring it inside. I tore it up on the porch and let the pieces scatter in the wind. I didn't need to read his excuses. I knew exactly who he was now. Claire texted me a week later. She said she had moved out of Adam's apartment and was staying with her sister. She was going to therapy. She thanked me for talking to her that day, saying it had helped her more than I knew. I realized something then. Healing wasn't just about moving on. It was about not letting bitterness take root. By February, I had completed 5 items on my list. I could make a decent Thai curry. I had 3 slightly misshapen bowls that I was irrationally proud of. I had run a full 10K. And I had started a side business selling handmade candles. Life was slowly becoming mine again. Then one evening, as I was closing up my little candle stall at a local market, Adam showed up. I felt my stomach tighten, but I stood my ground. He looked tired, older somehow. He said he missed me, that he'd made a huge mistake. He claimed he wanted to start over. I told him no. I told him I wasn't interested in recycling old heartbreak. He tried to touch my arm, but I stepped back. I reminded him that when I needed him most, he chose someone else. His face hardened. He muttered something about me never forgiving and walked away. I didn't feel sad. I felt relief. Lucas started stopping by my stall at the market more often. Sometimes he'd bring coffee. Sometimes just a smile and a joke. It wasn't romantic. Not yet. But it felt good to be around someone who didn't come with a history of broken trust. One rainy Sunday, Emily and I curled up on my couch with tea and a stack of old movies. Halfway through, she turned to me and said, "You're different now. Stronger." I didn't see it at first, but she was right. I wasn't living in the shadow of betrayal anymore. I was making plans for the future, and Adam wasn't in them. That night, I opened my list again. I added something new. Forgive but never forget. It wasn't about forgiving Adam for his sake. It was for mine. Because holding on to anger would only keep me tied to him. Spring came, and with it, new energy. My candle business was doing better than I'd hoped. I got invited to participate in a larger artisan fair. Lucas offered to help me set up my booth. We spent the whole day laughing, arranging candles, and talking to customers. When the fair ended, we grabbed dinner at a small Italian place nearby. We talked until the staff started cleaning up around us. When he walked me to my car, I felt something shift. It wasn't the dizzy rush I'd felt with Adam years ago. It was steadier, calmer, safer. I went home that night smiling. 2 days later, Adam's mother called me out of the blue. She said she'd heard what happened and wanted to apologize for her son's behavior. She admitted she had always thought he took me for granted. I thanked her, but told her I had no intention of reconnecting with him. She said she understood. It felt like another door quietly closing. By the start of summer, my life looked completely different than it had a year ago. I had new friends from the market and my pottery class. I had muscles from running. I had laughter in my home again. One evening, I sat on my porch watching the sunset. Claire called to tell me she had met someone new. She sounded happy in a way I had never heard before. I wished her the best and meant it. When I hung up, I realized I had let go of the last bit of bitterness I'd been holding on to. It felt like taking a deep breath after being underwater for too long. By late summer, the days were longer and warmer. and my heart felt lighter than it had in years. I woke up early each morning to open the windows and let in the smell of fresh air and blooming flowers. My little candle business was thriving, and I was invited to sell at one of the biggest fall markets in the city. Lucas volunteered to help me again. We spent the morning packing boxes into his truck, joking about how I was becoming a candle empire queen. When we arrived at the market, I was nervous, but his presence calmed me. Throughout the day, he chatted with customers, told them stories about my scents, and made everyone laugh. I realized I had gone hours without thinking about the past or the pain Adam had caused. That night, after we unloaded everything back at my place, we sat on the porch drinking iced tea. The sky was streaked with shades of orange and pink. Lucas leaned back in his chair and told me he admired how I had rebuilt my life. It was the first time I believed someone when they said they were proud of me. I felt a warmth in my chest that wasn't about romance, at least not yet. It was about being seen for who I was now, not who I had been. One Saturday in September, I ran into Adam unexpectedly at the grocery store. He looked surprised, almost guilty, like he'd been caught somewhere he didn't belong. He asked how I'd been, and I told him honestly I was happy. His eyes narrowed slightly, as if happiness without him was an insult. He started to say something about us, but I cut him off. I told him there was no us anymore and there never would be. Then I wished him well and walked away. It felt like closing the last chapter of a book I had already finished reading. That night I called Emily and told her what happened. She laughed and said it sounded like I had just slammed a door without even raising my voice. Felt empowering. By October, Lucas and I were spending more time together outside of the market. We went hiking, visited art galleries, and cooked dinner together. One evening, while chopping vegetables in my kitchen, he told me he liked me, more than just as a friend. My heart skipped, but not with fear. I realized I liked him too, and the difference between this feeling and what I'd had with Adam was staggering. There was no uncertainty, no constant need to prove myself. It was steady, patient, and kind. We decided to take things slow. Around that time, Claire sent me a message. She had moved in with her new partner and was glowing with joy. She thanked me again for the day we sat and talked after Adam's betrayal. She said it had been the first step in reclaiming her own life. Her message made me smile. It reminded me that even from pain, something good could grow. By the time winter rolled in, I had more orders for my candles than I could handle alone. Lucas started helping me pour wax and package boxes in the evenings. Emily called it our unofficial candle date nights. We laughed through every messy spill and crooked label. On New Year's Eve, Lucas and I stood on my porch watching fireworks in the distance. He reached for my hand and I didn't hesitate. Felt right. Not rushed, not forced, just right. As the clock struck midnight, I made a quiet promise to myself. I would never again let betrayal define my worth. Spring came again, and with it, the anniversary of the day I discovered Adam's affair. I thought it might bring sadness, but instead it brought gratitude. I realized that day had been the beginning of everything better. Without it, I might still be living in a half-life, shrinking myself to fit someone else's comfort. Now I was building something real: friendships, love, work I was proud of. Lucas surprised me that afternoon with a picnic at the lake. The same lake I had once dreamed of living near with Adam. Only this time the dream was different. It wasn't about a perfect house or a perfect partner. It was about peace, laughter, and someone who chose me every single day. As we watched the water ripple in the sunlight, I thought about how far I had come. Betrayal had broken me once, but it had also cleared the way for a life I never imagined. I no longer feared the past. I no longer carried the weight of what Adam did. I had forgiven him, not for his sake, but for mine. Lucas leaned closer and whispered that he couldn't wait to see what we would build together. For the first time in a long time, I felt excited for the future instead of anxious. When we packed up the picnic and headed home, I realized something simple but profound. The best revenge was never proving Adam wrong. The best revenge was living a life so full, so peaceful, and so genuinely happy that the past became nothing more than a story I once told. And that was exactly what I intended to do.